Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and in this video here, I'm going to be showing you all if you have a hard-modded Xbox 360, so really a console such as a RGH or JTAG, which is capable of running homebrew and custom applications such as this right here, which is running the Aurora dashboard. I'm going to be showing you all how you can set up the LiNK service on there properly in order to get online and play with others using the System Link functionality. Now, there's a few things I do want to clarify right off the bat. Number one, this is different than a service that most people know about called Xlink Kai. There's nothing wrong with that service, it is great, but I am covering LiNK on this one because in terms of LiNK, the nice thing is this one is exclusive to the Xbox 360, but the cool thing about it is that it's really all within the dashboard and such itself here. So when we get this all up and running, you all will be able to see everything really working here, such as the System Link functionality on this. Secondly, this is free as well. This is not going to cost anything in regards to using the service or any of that. And third, this is going to be different than Xbox Live, meaning that you are not going to be able to do Xbox Live multiplayer and such on here like matchmaking. This is essentially taking games which have System Link functionality, and instead of having two consoles or even multiple consoles physically linked to each other on your local network, it ends up taking that and uses this as a tunneling service in order to connect your console to other consoles for free over the LiNK service using the ability that System Link has, or what LAN would have. Essentially, it's taking what would be LAN and it ends up putting it on the internet. So that's the nice thing about it. But the cool thing is you are not strictly limited to this setup here. If you want to use LiNK and you want to jump to Xlink Kai and you want to also use Xbox Live as well, you're able to do that. But what I'm saying here is this one is still going to be separate, although it can coexist with the other services. So with that, you are going to need a few things. Of course, you're going to need your modified Xbox 360, and you're going to need games that are compatible with the System Link functionality. The choice I'm having here is Gears of War 3 as an example. I'm actually kind of setting this up in advance because a friend and I are going to be planning to play online, so I kind of want to get this system set up here. But it's also going to be helpful if you have a computer or if you have to, even a phone, which will allow you to get into your router settings. So it's not too difficult, and I'm going to have some guidance, but you might be on your own a little bit for setting up your router settings. So if you cannot configure your own router settings on your network, unfortunately, this is not going to work. And you are also going to need internet on your system. You do not need to be connected to Xbox Live, but you do need internet access on your console itself. So if you are able to, plug it into an Ethernet connection, worst case scenario, hook up to your Wi-Fi network, but either way, you will need to go online because, well, we are playing online for this. So let's go ahead and get started with some of the things that we're going to be getting into here. Now, in many of my videos, if I am referencing something, I do like to give credit where credit is due, and I do want to cite this guide here, which is over on the 360 Hacks subreddit from user Cleggers. I ended up using this here, and this ended up being a pretty well written guide in which he's able to break it down pretty well in terms of doing the initial setup as well as doing the game setup as well too. And we will walk through this. So this is really going to be a visual that's going to be combined with this guide here. But if you are lost at any point and you do either need to rewatch a part, or even if you need to see something in writing, I will have his guide linked down below in the description, and I do want to provide a thank you for writing this up. Now, getting back to the console, there's going to be two important prerequisites that you're going to need to get started on this. You are going to need the latest dashboard running the avatar update. Now, keeping up with the latest dashboard is just going to make things easier here, but in terms of the avatar update, there is a way of checking that. What you can do is bring up the guide button on here, go over to settings, go down to system settings, and say yes. Once this comes up, we can exit out of here. Now go ahead, scroll over to your social feed, and if you see something like this where you're able to see your avatar smiling and waving and such, that means that you already have the avatar update installed. If you do not have this, I am going to have a video linked down below in the description, which is a breakdown and a guide showing not only how you can update your dashboard, but also how you can install the avatar update. That is going to be required for a few games, so make sure you have that in place. The second thing you're going to need is you're going to need the Aurora dashboard, because we're going to be doing everything through that here. As you can see, I'm on the standard dashboard, but if I go to Xbox Home and load this up, it is going to bring up Aurora in a few seconds. So you are going to need this set up. If you do not have Aurora set up, you are going to need to do that, and I will also have a video linked down below in the description, which will show how to set up Aurora. So with that done, as long as you have the latest dashboard, the avatar update, and you have Aurora set up on here, you should be good to continue onwards. So with that, the first thing we need to do is go into DashLaunch. Go ahead and find DashLaunch here. It depends on how you're going to be launching it, but I'm just going to launch it within this. So I need to go to the D's. Here is DashLaunch, and once you find it, go ahead and give it a launch. Now there's going to be a few things that you need to configure. What you can do is come down over to Network, open this up, and ping patch must be set to enabled. This way, as it says here, if enabled, ping limit will be removed for System Link Play. And since we are going to be playing on the internet with System Link, that is going to be important. The next thing we need to disable is going to be DevLink, which by default here is going to be disabled. So as long as that is disabled, it's all good. But as you can see, ping patch is enabled, DevLink is disabled. If you have to change those and then you save them, press the right bumper. Now go down to preferably your hard drive and tap the X button, wherever you see a green icon like you see right here. But as you can see, I was able to save those settings to my hard drive itself. Now you can press the right bumper yet again and go all the way down to quit and tap the A button on this. The next thing you need to do is now going to be either on a computer or a laptop or a phone, really some kind of device that has a web browser, and you're going to need to access XboxUnity.net. Now do keep in mind, because it does not have HTTPS unfortunately, and that can lead to a little bit of an annoyance. What you'll need to do is I'm going to have it linked directly down below in the description, and you're going to need to click that link, but it needs to be exactly www.xboxunity.net. And once you come here in the top right corner, there's going to be a section for login or register. If you already have an account, you are going to have to log into it. And if you do not have an account, you're going to have to register for the first time and go through that process. As you can see, I have been signed in here. So once you are signed in, you can click on your name and go over to settings, and you should see some information here. You should see your username, your email, and your API key. And you do not want to share this with anyone else. You can also change your password if you want to. But here, I'm actually going to reset my API key, which you don't have to do, but I'm just doing this because it's been a while here, so I can kind of get this fresh on my console. So I'm going to go ahead, reset that. I do have a different API key, and at this point, once you have your username and password set up, you can either take down the API key, or if you're comfortable typing in your password on your console, if it's not too annoying to type in, we can go ahead and do that. So with that, let's go ahead and move back over to the console once the account on XboxUnity has been set up. Over at your console, you're going to fire up Aurora, make sure it is connected to the internet, and press the start button. Now what you need to do is come down over to profile, and in here you need to see what is set up here. Now the profile settings here for auto sign in or the profile you select is totally up to you, but on here you can go ahead and enable the Unity connection if it has not been enabled already. From here, go ahead and type in your username, and then for the API key you're going to tap the request button, so press the A button right here, and it's going to bring this up in which you need to enter your Unity password. Do exactly as it says, the password you just used for your account, go ahead and punch it in here. With your password entered, go ahead and hit done. Give it a few seconds, and as you can see here, my API key, well, you might not be able to see it because I'm blanking it out, but my API key did change, which to me shows that it was able to make that connection and pull my new API key, and you should now have your API key in place, which is going to be important, of course, for your Unity sign-in. Now, the next thing we're going to do here is probably the hardest part of this setup, which is going to be setting up your router in order to accept this service and allow you to connect from your console to LiNK on here. What you'll need to do is sign into your router, and this can be done with a phone, a tablet, or a desktop, whatever you can do to open up a browser on your own local network. But first, before we do that, let's go ahead and set our IP address as a static IP on our console itself. If you don't know how to do that, you can exit out of here. Now press the back button, and as you can see in the IP address, you should have your local IP address right here. You might just want to jot this down because we're going to set it as a static IP address, essentially meaning it's going to be the permanent IP address for the console on this network. You can always change it in the future, but it's just not going to pull a new IP address every single time you connect your system to your network. In order to do that though, again, keep that in mind. Now press B on here. Now what you can do is bring up the guide button, go all the way over to settings, go into system settings and say yes. From here, go down to your network settings. Go ahead and find whichever network you're connected to. I'm using a wired network, as you can see. And inside of here, you're going to need to configure your network. Now on here, you're going to see your current IP address settings and everything else that is needed, which is currently working for your system. If you want to keep this simple, you can just go ahead, like take a picture of this here, note it down, do what you need to, and we're going to set this from automatic to standard. So in order to do that, go into your IP settings, change this to manual. Now what you need to do is manually enter in that information. So for this, I'm going to put in my local IP address, which is that 192 address. Give me a few moments. Once that's done, you can hit OK, go into the subnet mask and do the exact same thing. Now I do want to mention that your IP address and your network settings are probably going to be different on your own network, so don't just blindly punch in what I'm doing. You're going to want to put in all the information for your specific network. And if anybody might be wondering if this is sensitive information, no, it's not. This is all just local network settings right here. None of it is outward, so this is all local to your own network. It's fine to show this here. But once that's all done, you can go down and hit done. And now you can do the same thing with the DNS settings. So come down here. Again, make sure you make note of this if you haven't already, and you're going to type in the same thing. Go down to manual, and then here I did not have a secondary DNS because that's optional, but the primary DNS, we're just going to do the exact same thing on here and set it to what the primary DNS was automatically set to. Once that's done, go ahead and hit done, and as you can see here, these settings are exactly the same as before, except this time around they're manual. So like I said, the nice thing is whenever I have this connected to my network, it's not going to pull a new IP address. So now with that done, we can hit back yet again, and at this point we can just go ahead and exit back out to Aurora, because why not? And now with all that set, you're going to need to go into your actual router. Now this part of the video, unfortunately, I can't be as granular about because every single person is going to have a different router configuration or different router, or there's going to be some common ones, but everyone's going to have a different router, and you might not even have access to yours, which at this point, if you do not have access to your router, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to continue on, like I said at the beginning of this video. But what I can recommend doing is going to this website, which will be linked down below in the description. This is going to be portforward.com, and what you can do is go over here to the search function, and you can look up your router itself. You might know it off the top of your head, or you might have to look at the back of your router, look at the bottom of your router, and look for the model number. But for example, I did some searching, like here's an iconic one, but if you still have like a WRT54G up and running, you can look up that model number, you can search right here, and then you can look for this here. So for example, how to open ports in a Linksys WRT54G router. You can come over here and you can see that there's going to be different versions that you can use, and it says pick the guide that most closely matches your router. So if you pick like a version 8, for example, you can click on that. And then what you can do is just start scrolling down, and it's going to show all of this information right here. Now we already did the step of setting a static IP address. We don't need a VPN on here. However, at this point, this goes through the process of showing you how you can connect to your router, some of the default usernames and passwords and such on here, and where you need to go in order to set your port forwarding settings on here. It already has one that's recommended for Xbox Live because 3074 has been problematic enough, but there's going to be 2 ports that you need to set. There's going to be 3071 and 3072. Both of those you need to set forwarding for TCP and UDP. Now, if you want something a little more modern as an example, like if you have like a Nighthawk router, for example, you can do the exact same thing right here. Like let's say this one is my model. You can go in here, and again, you're just gonna have to do a little bit of reading here. You're going to be on your own a little bit, but you can set your static IP, which is already what we did. It's going to show the login instructions, so the local IP address you need to hit. It's going to have the recommendations for the default username and password on here if you have not already, and then at this point it's going to go through the process of setting up your port forwarding on here. Again, the same thing you're going to need to do here is if you want to set like 3074 on TCP and UDP to be forwarded, that's great, but the 2 that we're going to need are 3071 and 3072. Both of those need to be forwarded on our Xbox's IP address if that is applicable. So you're going to need to find that device if needed and set those 2 on there. Now I'm personally using a Google Wi-Fi, so on here you can see that I've already done this, and it goes through the process of, going through, unfortunately it's an app, but going through the app, going through the settings on here, going into the port management and such, going through all this, and again, being able to set a port forward entry. Now I'm going to have some screenshots real quick just as an example, but you could see here, it's going to look something like this. Again, I'm using the Google Wi-Fi app since that is what I use here, but you need to pick your device, which is the RGH that you're going to be using, or the Xbox in general, and you'll set 3071 on both external and internal, and you're going to set it for both TCP and UDP, and you're going to do the exact same thing with 3072. Those are the two ports that need to be forwarded. Additionally, you're also going to need to enable UPnP on your router. This is called Universal Plug and Play, and you're just going to need to enable this if it hasn't been enabled already. I'm going to have another screenshot showing that mine was already enabled by default, but these are the two settings that are going to be the most important on your router. Once you've set up both of those ports and you verify that UPnP is enabled, at that point you should be good to continue on. Now the good news I have for you all is that the hardest part of that is over. You've been able to conquer the router settings, and if you've been able to do that, the rest of this should be an easier setup. And the good news is the rest of it's actually going to be here on the Xbox 360. But one thing that's important to do, since we just changed some router settings for our console here, it would be recommended to do a full power cycle. So go ahead, turn off the console and then turn it back on, and I'll see you back here in a few seconds. Now that the console has been rebooted and is still on the network, press the start button and scroll all the way down to the modules section. Within modules, go to the right and go down to Nova and press the A button on here. Now you're going to want to make sure it always loads on boot, and I did disable the screen capture combo, but it's probably by default enabled for you. I just did that because it was conflicting, I believe, with my trainers on here. But you want to tap the RB button on your controller, and you're going to see a few settings right here. You can see LiNK should be enabled, RSS feed should be there, and UPnP, these should all be enabled. And you can see those two ports I've been talking about. The data port is for 3072, and the broadcast port is 3071. Come down here and tap the A button to verify. Now you can see here that it is able to pass everything, except the one thing that's failing for me is UPnP capable router detected. Unfortunately, there's nothing here I can really do on this. I went into my router, I made sure that UPnP was already enabled, and it was by default on here, so you can try to refresh this if you want to, but do keep this in mind. If you can get all of these to pass, that is good, but if your UPnP is failing, it's not really the end of the world there. As long as everything else passes, you should be good to go at this point. But again, make sure you go into your router, make sure that you have configured those settings, and that's going to be the most important thing. As long as we can get our ports reachable, that is good. So we can press back, and we can press back yet again. So that has been set up at this point. So now, as long as we exit out of here, really the entire process for setting up LiNK has been completed. So now we get to the fun part here, which is going to be playing the video games. Now, first of all, you do need to know that if you're just going to be playing a game that really only has online multiplayer, as in matchmaking, that is going to be for Xbox Live, and that is not what we're going to be covering on here. The games that we're going to cover are the ones that have local area network on them, such as Gears of War 3, and that means that if you play this game, you can take 2 or more physical systems, hook them up to each other either through a router or with a direct network cable, and you can play on 2 different TVs, 2 different systems, but you can play together and you can play locally. Again, we're taking that functionality and we're utilizing it on the internet itself. So the example I want to use on this is going to be Gears of War 3. In order to do this here with any game that's going to be compatible, you need to tap the Y button on this game, and you need to come down to the title updates. And it would be most recommended to press the RB button to go to the Unity Marketplace and download the latest version of the title update. Now do keep in mind, if you're going to be playing online with a friend, for example, and you all are wanting to play on specifically version 3, or you want to play on version 0, that means no title update, that's going to be up to you. But if you want better results, it's generally better to have the latest title update. Once it has been downloaded, you can tap the LB button and tap A in order to enable this here. Keep in mind, not all games are going to have their updates on here, and not all games will have updates, but Gears of War 3 is one of those examples that does. Now press B yet again, and now we can go ahead and boot up Gears of War 3. So it's been able to apply the title update. We can give it a few seconds here, and as you can see, it is booting up, which doesn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. Alright, now this here took a little bit of time, and I'm going to say that this is also maybe another difficult part. It's going to be depending on each game, and the good news is you don't have to do that whole configuration to get it set up on your system every single time, but that will be a per system basis, at least if you have multiple consoles. However, what you do need to do is here, this is where you can set this up on your game. So it depends on whatever game you're playing. I'm going to be choosing Gears of War 3, and here what you need to do is go ahead, fire up the game, start it up, and do keep in mind as well, if you're going to be playing with friends where let's say you have some downloadable content and they don't, they won't be able to play that unless they have the content and vice versa. So just make sure people at minimum have the same game, the same title update enabled, and also if there's any additional content, make sure that everyone is using the same content as well so everyone can connect together. But what you can do here is you're going to need to find in your game the system link functionality. You can see here at the top right of the screen, my party type is set to local. So if I hit the back button and change this to system link, that's exactly what we need. I'm going to tap the A button. It's going to look for some system link parties on here, but none of them are here. So I'm going to tap the Y button to create a party. Now the next thing that you can do is you can now bring up the guide button, and once that's been set up in game, the system link functionality is now enabled. You can now tap the A button on system link, wait for the lobbies to show up, and as you can see here, there's a few public rooms. So public room 1, public room 2, and you can also go to the game room itself. You can check this out, and you can also check out your additional settings on here if you need to tweak anything or just observe what's been shown on this. However, you can see that there's a few users here, and there's myself on there as well too. That is my user profile, and then that is the account on here, since there's technically going to be 2. But what you can do here is go to the lobby itself, and you can either join a room or you can create a new room. So I'm going to tap the Y button on here. If you want to create a new room, you can say this is going to be like co-op play, for example. If you want to allow hacks or a modded game or DLC required, that's up to you. You can set your region on here, which is going to make a difference at times. And you can also go down to set a password on here if you so wish to. I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to create a room for co-op play. Give it a few moments on here. You can see right here, I do have my game showing up. It is enabled for co-op, and there is exactly 1 user on here. I can even refresh that as well too, and that's it. But the user in there is, of course, myself. So I'm going to go to the back button, go back yet again, and this is technically the last time I'm going to show this page here, and this is optional, but if you want to verify that it's up and running and working, you can actually go over to the XboxUnity.net page, and if you refresh it, you should be able to find your game that you're playing as well as the user count. Since I'm the only person right now playing Gears of War 3, you can see that you can't see the users themselves, but you can see that this is at least showing up, which means that that is reflected on the site, and everything seems to be successfully connected. At this point here, however, let's say if I want to play horde mode, I can go into here, set a, I don't think I can do standard, yep, because that is Xbox Live, but if you go to private, you can set this however you want to, do whatever you need, start a match, continue on, and you can see here, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to start this just because there's quite literally no one else in the world right now who is playing this, but if somebody is wanting to, for example, they can hop onto Gears of War 3, they can go to the system link section, and from there, they should be able to join my game right here, in which they can just, tap the A button and join in, or if I wanted to join this public room, for example, I could do that. It's going to be up to you on this. I'll actually do that, like if I just want to jump in there, I can, but that's where you're able to jump into one of those rooms, and then once you are connected, you should be able to get connected to the other people who are going to be playing over LiNK. And from there, you can go ahead, have your fun, do what you want to on there. It's also worth noting as well too that the functionality is not the same, but it's going to be similar and inspired by Xbox Live. So let's say if, this first person here, if I want to check out their profile, I can tap the A button, and if I'm in the same room as them, I can set them as leader, add them as a friend, at least on LiNK here, block them, kick them, report, do whatever I need to on here. So that's how all of that works at least. Try refreshing this here. It looks like it's going to stay on that, but I know after some time this ends up falling off. But either way, that is essentially how you get this all set up and running, and how you're then able to play games with your friends that you can either host or you can join on here. So hopefully that helped you all out get started. Hopefully that was able to assist in getting LiNK up and running and give you all a little bit of a breakdown as to how LiNK works on a hard modded console. Either way, that is about it for this video here. This is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.